Hi, I'm RC Jim. Have you experienced radio failures? At our club, there isn't probably a week that goes by without somebody complaining about, losing control of the plane due to what they feel is a radio problem. Oftentimes they'll blame it on the high-tension power lines that, we fly pretty close to. And other times a certain dead spot in the pattern or whatever it might be. But how do you know for sure that it was a radio problem? Well, I have experienced some situations that I've been able to document where I know clearly that there's been a loss of control of the airplane due to a radio problem. Typically, we're unable to determine, was it the transmitter, was it the receiver, was it interference, was it something else? But what I've been wanting to do is to just confirm what's going on. So with this particular set of testing that I have in this video, I'm working with my Radiomaster along with a Spektrum receiver and a LemonRX receiver. And then I also compare the results of those with using the ELRS module on the back of this with an ELRS receiver. So let's have a look and see what's possible. And I've simulated a situation with lots of potential interference and obstacles and everything under the sun to make it as difficult as possible. So yeah, let's have a look and see what I found. In conducting this test, I wanted to first off think about what the situation was at our flight field. So as you can see here, we got that mown grass area and runway. For little tiny planes and stuff, all the flying just simply takes place within that pretty much. And then even with the larger planes where you see that long grass area, to the left of that, of course it's all trees along there, but typically we'll be just barely across that line of trees and flying our pattern for the downwind leg. So the 715 feet I would see is likely about the maximum that we would be doing. Now, in figuring that that's the maximum that we would be doing, I would like to have something that would work double that, so say about 1,400 feet. And to me, that would be plenty of leeway as far as that is concerned. So now as we look at the testing area, this is around our home. We live near Lake Macquarie, so you got a saltwater lake out there. You got a bunch of trees along the shoreline. They are very thick in two spots, sort of in just to the left of the middle, and then the upper left-hand corner is where they're really thick. Down in the lower right-hand third, apart from ones that aren't involved and in the opposite direction, they are less thick down there. Well, we've got our test rig all set up. We're going to have the camera up there in the tripod. It's going to be viewing the plane down here. Got chairs around for a bit of a windbreak to just hopefully keep the thing from blowing away. We're in a bit of a protected spot here, but there is some breeze blowing today. I'm going to be walking down initially to sort of as far as you can see way down there. The place that I'm going to be walking to is right down in there behind those trees. That's as far as this reserve goes. We've got all of these trees between here and there, but not much in terms of houses. Got a little bit of this deck sort of area here, but largely just lots of trees between here and there. And we've got the plane up here. As we've set up the plane, we've positioned it such that it'll be on an angle to the path that we are walking. We want to simulate the reduction in signal from the antenna not being square on from the direction of the signal coming to it. And when we've got two antennas, then we sort of have to compromise between that. because it's going to take the signal from whichever one is best. So we want them both to be as poor as we can get them without making one of them better. And the other thing is that as we are testing this, the bottom line is, are we moving the controls when we want to move them? You know, the right controls at the right time, the right amount, that sort of thing. So the best way, I think, to do that is to set up an automatic movement of the controls so that every second they move. And then you can tell, as we do the video, we can even look at the soundtrack on the video software, and it'll have a little blip where the sound of the control surface is moving, and it can actually measure the distance between those blips to see if it's actually doing it on the 1 second intervals, or whether it's coming in late, or whatever it might be. So that is a great way to determine, do we have control without lags due to frame losses and that type of thing. So at the start of the test, we synchronize our watch and the video time and the time on the transmitter so that we can relate all of those things together precisely. And then we go for a walk, and then we make notations as to when we arrive at certain places and what we do, whether we turn around or whatever the case might be. And that way we can compare both the flight log that's created in the radio as well as the video of what's taking place with the control surfaces and our notes as to what was going on when. Well, let's have a look at the results of our tests. This first one here is with the MX2 with the LemonRX 7-channel stabilized receiver with telemetry using the Radiomaster T16S 4-in-1 transmitter. Of course, the plane is fixed in one place, as you have seen, as we've shown you. And we took a walk along the lake with the Radiomaster transmitter, and then made notations as to where we were at different things along the way. So up here is where we started at our home, and very quickly as we began our trip, the signal strength dropped off. We're looking at the received signal strength. So this is the strength of the signal that's received by the receiver and reported by telemetry back to the transmitter, which is recorded in the log. And of course, this data here is from the flight log. Time here is the time of the video, which we synchronized with our notes and all of that type of thing. So down at 600 feet, at that point there's still a few trees between the creek and our home, quite a few trees close in, a bit of a pool deck and whatever that you'd get into partway along here, and then some scattered large trees, in through here. When you see these colored bars, the yellow means that there was repeated delays in the control response. So every second it was responding, but instead of responding precisely on the second, it was delayed a bit. So with that, we'd be saying there were some frame losses involved, not long enough for a hold, but frame losses that meant that when we moved the transmitter stick, it wasn't an instant response. It might have been a quarter second late, so something that wouldn't crash your plane, but not good. Where it's red, that meant that there was no control response at all. It just wasn't working. So we get down there to when we get down to the creek, all of this stuff here is at the creek in this area here. And so we first off rotated 360 degrees to see what that would do. And basically you see that little bit of improvement there. It might be something to do with turning around, and we did turn around quite slowly You can see the rotation got finished about here. But not anything spectacular in terms of difference there. Having said that, coming back when we're facing the plane, certainly it did better than going away when our body was between the transmitter and the plane. But nonetheless, rotating it seemed to be a very slight improvement, but not an awful lot. We rotated the horizontal, the antenna to horizontal, and this would be facing back at the thing, and so perhaps that has improved it a bit there. And of course, what is going to be best is related to which antenna on the plane is the one that's providing the strongest signal. And we got the plane cocked on an angle, so I don't know if it's the vertical antenna or the horizontal antenna, but one of them apparently was receiving it a bit better with the antenna being horizontal. And that's our best guess. It's just one spike up there, so it's hard to be certain about that. Okay, we go along there, we have a bunch more trees, but then we get into some really thick trees. You know, it's basically a forest with dozens of trees together, and they're big trees as well. So as we get into that, you know, initially we're still okay, but eventually those trees block it, and it gets pretty bad until we get all the way over at the school. And as you recall from the picture that we showed you earlier, at the school, when we're at this point, we've got some thick trees right at the school, but then the line of sight goes across the water pretty well directly to the few trees that are at our home that were in the way. So you got trees at both ends, but largely a clear path, as compared to through here where you might have 100 trees that, you know, are getting in the way or something. Maybe not that many, but a lot. Okay, so at the school, we're getting control again with the LemonRX. We, again, rotate 360 degrees, and, you know, again, it doesn't seem to make an awful lot of difference. We then begin our journey back, and probably here where you see this improvement there is when we come out of the thick trees that are there at the school. Where that's gotten better, but then we get into the thick trees that are closer here. These ones are probably getting around these other thick trees a bit. So we get into some more thick trees, lose our signal entirely for a period of time, and then it gradually improves as we get back. Well, here we have the test data for the Spektrum. This is in an E-flite P51, a 1.2 meter wingspan plane. Has an AR631 receiver in it, and that's one that has a single antenna external. You know, it's not the one with an inbuilt antenna. It's got the wire going out with the antenna at the end. And in this particular plane, the antenna sort of goes down and into the bottom behind all of the electronic gear. And the way we've got the plane positioned, that's actually kind of like facing, you know, not directly on, but doesn't have anything inside the plane that is getting in the way of the antenna. You know, so it's a pretty good position for this particular plane where that one antenna is. Again, we've got indication of signal strength here, and this is the RSSI signal strength, so received signal strength. Goes down pretty quickly as you begin the walk, and you note that we've got frame losses beginning very early on. But these frame losses are absolutely crazy. I mean, you start out seeing some fades and then some frame losses and then some holds. But in the places where they happen, you know, there are places in here where there's thousands that happen at one moment in time. And, you know, it's reporting it every half second. So you shouldn't have more than, say, 50 frame losses. in one of those periods, and yet they're like thousands. So basically I just ignored that data because what we're concerned about is the movement of the controls, and again that's indicated with the yellow and the red bars here. So we get down to the creek, no problem, everything is working fine. We move the antenna to horizontal, we rotate 360 degrees, put the antenna back vertical again, continue our walk, and we're not yet to the edge of the thick trees, but we've gone past several big trees, plus we've got, quite a few trees right up here near our home and all of that. So we do get some places where we got controlled delays taking place. Total loss of control just before we get to the thick trees, and of course that's with our back to the plane, so we got our body in the way as well. Have a period of time there near the edge of the thick trees where everything is fine, but then all of a sudden we lose everything, and so basically from there until we get to the school and back to the edge of the school grounds, basically no control, So we get outside of the edge of the school grounds, past the big set of trees up there. We have control again for a little bit. Again, when we get into those, coming up to that thick grove of trees, we lose control again. But then fine the rest of the way back. Here we have the data for the ELRS. This is using the ELRS module on the back of the Radiomaster T16S. This is the micro one, that Ranger Micro that fits on the back here. Of course, that just simply clips onto the back of your transmitter. You remove a little panel there. This clips in, and it's got an antenna that screws into there, a little T antenna that it uses. So this is using that system. And with that, we've got the how good the signal is coming through here. In this particular case, it's transmission quality. So as we look at the 100 with the, I think it's like 500 packets a second that this is sending, this is saying every second all 500 of those packets got through. When it gets down to even down to 10 and here someplace, that's saying that 10% of the 500 packets got through, so that's saying 50 of the packets got through every second. Okay, that's almost as good as 100% on a normal DSMX, type of situation. But we do see that there's a few times it got right down to 0. Now keep in mind, this is sampling the data every half of a second. And so when that's on 0, it just means on that half a second it happened to be at 0 at that time. But you will note that on this graph, I don't have any yellow bars, I don't have any red bars. As I look at the video, I cannot see any place during the test where that control didn't go back and forth every second. It probably had some tiny little minuscule delay someplace, but not perceptible by just looking at the video. Appeared to have full control the entire time through there. So, yes, it does get affected by trees, the first of the big trees here, the edge of the thick trees there. And as you see these big changes back and forth, I'm not sure what's going on there, whether that's interference that's causing that or what. It doesn't seem to be as predictable. The other one just sort of went down and it stayed down and came up and stayed up. This has got a lot more ups and downs in it, but nonetheless maintained control through it all. And note that we've got a 100 milliwatts setting set for the transmitter power. Now, when I use this, I actually use the dynamic power setting where it can go all the way up to 250 milliwatts, but it only uses the amount of power that it actually needs to get a good transmission quality. So a good portion of the time it might just be operating at 10 or 20 milliwatts. But when it needs to, it jumps up the power, so you could have 2.5 times the amount of power they have here and that's with a 250 milliwatts, and it is possible to run these things at up to 500 milliwatts, but there's no way on God's green earth that you'd ever be doing that or wanting to do that for line of sight type flying. Even 100 milliwatts is totally fine, but the dynamic, hey, you know, extra good. So as you look at that, absolutely fantastic. So the question is, why wouldn't you just simply use ELRS for everything? Well, you could very well do it. It's low cost and all of that. But as you think about something like the LemonRX, with LemonRX you can get a very low cost receiver that has stabilization. If you want stabilization with the ELRS, basically you're going to tack on another module attached to your receiver that does the stabilization. You've got all those extra cables and things that could potentially go wrong. Plus, those stabilization modules cost more than a LemonRX receiver, you know, in many cases. So that would be one reason for not doing it. If you had something that you need umpteen channels, then maybe you wouldn't want to use ELRS. ELRS is limited in terms of channels. I've got mine set up for 16 channels. But basically, as you get into ELRS, you to go for a very large number of channels, you sacrifice how often the signal gets sent on some of those channels. You only have the basic 8 or so that have the full frequency of sending the signal. But then as you go up beyond that, those are just intended for switches where you're turning on or off the lights or putting the flaps down or, you know, whatever case might be. And those would be updated less frequently than the primary ones. But, you know, for any of us that are in the normal realm, you know, 16 channels is totally fine. And 8 channels with the super sort of frequency that happens with the packet rate, you know, that is absolutely totally fine. So I trust that this has been helpful to you. Yeah, basically the conclusion is that given the horrible sort of thing that I've gotten this test with the trees and all of that type of thing, I think you can be very confident with any of these receivers as to line of sight flying that you're going to be totally fine. But as you compare the different receivers that are out there, while some people might think LemonRX, well, that's a third-party sort of thing, you know, should I even play around with that? Well, here we've got a third-party transmitter, the Radiomaster sort of thing, so it's not your, you know, normal Spektrum or whatever it might be. So you got that Radiomaster transmitter, we've got the LemonRX receiver that, you know, is reverse engineered and all of that, and it's working better than the Spektrum, you know. That's not to say that you're not going to find a Spektrum that can do just as well. You know, we just tested one Spektrum receiver, and you get other ones that would be more advanced and all of that type of thing. But the thought is that if you want a low-cost solution with telemetry and stabilization, LemonRX makes all the sense in the world. If you want to be just absolutely certain with regard to transmission quality, hey, you know, ELRS, probably not going to use stabilization with it, so if you can handle that, you know, ELRS is absolutely fantastic. You can get this transmitter with the ELRS and the internal module. This one has got the 4-in-1 module that's compatible with, you know, a lot of different brands, including the Spektrum. And of course, I came from Spektrum, so I've got the DSMX receivers in some of my planes. So the 4-in-1 module allows me to do that. It also allows me to use the LemonRX DSMX receivers, which I have in most of my planes. So that 4-in-1 module is great. You can also, you know, put the ELRS module on the back. Note that when you get the module on the back, it actually can go to higher power levels. It's got its own little fan built in there. And the biggest issue when you get into higher power levels is the heat generated by the transmitter. So you've got a fan that can be turned on at different power levels, and on the external module you got that extra thing, so the cooling is better when it's on the back as compared to being inside. But for normal line of sight flying, that is not going to make any difference at all. Well, I trust that this has been helpful to you. If you haven't done so already, make sure you subscribe. Just click on my little picture there in that circle, and then have a look at the next video in the series. So, trust that this has been helpful. You have a great day and enjoy your flying, and do so with confidence.